what we're doing is we're using Google Chrome to write a presentation on the effects of Google technology on today's society. I'm currently using Google Chrome and specifically Google Slides, which is what you're seeing right here.
Nice. Is it helpful?
Oh, it's very helpful. It's a lot easier to work than PowerPoint.
Google has been a helping force, but then also not so helpful force, because when I really just need like a quick answer to something, like, or a quick definition, and I don't have a dictionary at hand, or I don't have my equation sheets at hand, then I just simply look it up on Google, and it's been really helpful like when I'm in a time crunch. But at the same time, it's also been hurtful to me, because when I'm in class and I have to read a lot of information at a time, I get really tired easily now. And I think it's because Google just gives you fast information. But at the same time, it is helpful when you need that fast information. So it really is up to the person on whether or not you abuse Google or it's actually as a tool. So yeah.
Things from the past, things now are just from the past, because in the past Google had solely one purpose. Google was just used to find things that you did not know. Now you can do all these things on Google, and Google just does everything now. Google has Google Voice. Like, now it's going to put Siri out of business because Google just wants to use everything. I'm not talking down about it or anything, but that's just the difference. Google had when I was little and when I started using a computer, Google had one sole purpose: to be a search engine, like Bing, Yahoo. It was solely a search engine. Now you can do any and everything on it, and it's like how do these other companies who create software survive?
Really love Google because it has helped me to become the most organized person ever. I'm not the most organized of people, but through Google I've been able to put all of my work in specific folders, and it just helps me be a better student. If I have difficulty with the homework assignment or I have a question, I can just go type it into Google and I get an answer. Or I don't get the direct answer, but I get a series of links, and that'll help me as a college student, because I need to be able to discern between my different options and pick which is the best one.
Okay, so you buy a new laptop, turn it on, what is the first thing you would download?
Docs is the best facet of the transition from whatever email platform we were using before to Google. It's awesome to be able to have the means to, have a back and forth and a correspondence with students about their writing, especially since in senior seminar, you're working on your personal statement, your resume, supplemental essays, scholarship essays. So being able to track all of my feedback and the students' corrections in Google Docs has been especially helpful, especially the comments platform, where you can kind of give some context as to why you're giving students the feedback you're giving them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it is making people lazy to an extent, because it is a part of the internet, and the internet makes everything fast and it brings everything to your fingertips, as opposed to making you go out and search for the information. But laziness in that area is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes us more efficient, and efficiency is always good.
So there are 3 reasons that we decided to go with Chromebooks. The first is that the park test in New Jersey can be taken on Chromebooks, and so we knew that we were going to need that type of technology for the foreseeable future, so we wanted to invest in that. The second is that Chromebooks are very cheap, and so we can buy 4 times as many Chromebooks as we can laptops for the same amount of money. And so we wanted to provide access to students to more, the opportunity to have access to more machines, and so we wanted to buy something that was a little bit less expensive. And the third reason is that our whole school, all of North Star, has moved to Google platform. So we have now created email addresses for every student in K through 12. So you'll start your career at North Star, whether you come in K, 5, or 9, with a North Star email address that is a Google platform, and that email address will stay with you. And on Chromebooks, you can use your Google login to access all of the applications, to connect to your email, as well as use Google Drive, so Google Docs and Sheets.
Well, obviously, I think it's speeded up access to everything. It's also really given us the opportunity as a sort of teaching community to share, so that I can look up anything I want to look up instantaneously. For example, the radius of lithium compared to the radius of bromine. Right? I can pull those numbers straight away. Previously, I'd have to go find a book, find the chart with the one in, find the chart with the other in, right? And now it's just like seconds.
Is there, you just talked about the pros, but is there any cons with like the invention of Google? Like, do you think it's going to?
Yeah, I think from a teaching point of view, there's obviously the homework aspect where students can do the same thing, right? Very often they can copy something down off Google without ever internalizing it or understanding it, which kind of defeats the point, because the object is the learning, not the answer. So I think on a negative point of view, it's not so much from me using it as from students using it and just writing down stuff without thinking.
So one of the biggest advantages of using Google Docs is the speed of feedback. One of the hardest things to know as a student, I think, is how well you're doing on a problem at any given moment. And if students are submitting their work through Google Docs, I can immediately see what they're typing at the moment, and I can give them feedback on that. Sure, I could read over their shoulders. Sometimes it's just easier as a teacher and faster to send a comment via the Google Docs and via the technology. It helps so much with what we call aggressive monitoring, where throughout the entire period, the teacher is trying to figure out what every student is writing at once. By looking at one monitor, I can actually see all of that.
Teaching chemistry is a very, very conceptual subject. And what it's given me the ability to do is to have students do sort of online simulations and calculate things using certain programs on the internet that have, I think it's greatly enhanced student understanding of what's a very, very conceptual subject without taking hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of arduous work to try and put the pieces together. It really does help to be able to just perform a simulation and see what happens when you do something.
Thank you.
There are 3 other things about Google Classroom specifically that I find to be advantageous as a teacher. Before Google Classroom, it would be difficult for students to collaborate on one assignment and each have equal parts and have the written assignment be very clear. But with Google Docs, students can simply, or Google Classroom, students can simply share an assignment, each work on it, and then submit it together. Also, revisions. In biology, students have a tendency at first not completely write their assignments as clearly as they need to be. So revision is an extremely important aspect of the development of understanding in bio. So people start out with one level of understanding, then they gain more understanding and need to revise their work. this is really, really easy to do with Google Classroom. Students can just go back to the assignment, revise it, edit it, and resubmit it. And I can see all of those steps very easily as a teacher through Google Classroom. It's easy for me to just go through once students have submitted a document or assignment and check each one and give a grade. One time I gave a set of grades and students were emailed all of their grades, and then immediately some students wanted to redo the assignment and resubmit it. That communication is actually really helpful because it tells students how they're doing in real time, and then they can edit their work